Hello everyone. This is the makeup video for week 6. So you guys could not have class this week because of Hangul Day. So what we are going to talk about in this makeup video is what you would have done if you were able to have a Zoom class this week. The Zoom class would cover speaking and listening. So we cannot do speaking in this form, right? You're just going to have to listen and watch the video. But at the end, I'm going to have you create a conversation, and that will have to be our replacement for the speaking part this week. So let's go ahead and begin. First, we are going to review some grammar and do some listening to test our knowledge. First, let's review this grammar point. As, adjective, as, or not as, adjective, as. If you remember, an adjective is a word we use to describe things, right? It's 형용사. So if we are using as, adjective, as, we're using it as a description of something. More specifically, we use this to compare. We use this to talk about how something is the same or different from something else. So as review, let's go ahead and look at 3 sentences and see if you can decide and determine what they mean. Number 1, that sandwich is as big as your head. Okay, here we see as big as. First, I want to ask you, what 2 things are we comparing in this sentence? What are the 2 nouns in our sentence? We are comparing a sandwich and your head. And what are we saying? What is our comparison here? As big as. So this means the size is equal. So saying that sandwich is as big as your head means that your head and the sandwich are the same size. So it would be a very big sandwich, or maybe you have a very small head. Okay, let's look at number 2. It's not as cold as it was yesterday. Okay, so here we see not as cold as. And what are we comparing? Here it's not as clear to see because we just have it's and it was. But if we are talking about temperature, it is the weather. The weather today is not as cold as the weather was yesterday. Remember that in English, we can use different subjects to replace other nouns. For example, if I were talking about my friend Molly, I could say Molly is going to the store, or she is going to the store, right? So here, it is used to replace the noun weather. So we're comparing weather. Now, if I say that it is not as cold as it was yesterday, that means today it's a little warmer. Yesterday was more cold than today. So it's not as cold as it was yesterday. Let's look at one more example. You run as fast as Usain Bolt. Okay, so here we're using as fast as. And what are we comparing? We're comparing you and Usain Bolt, the fastest runner in the world, right? If we say you run as fast as him, this means it is equal, the same, right? You run the same speed as fast as Usain Bolt. Next, let's review adjective enough or not adjective enough. Remember that enough means the right amount of something. I have enough water. Not too much, not too little, enough. So we can use this also as a way to describe things using adjective enough or not adjective enough. We use this to talk about adequacy. Is it adequate or inadequate? Is there enough or not enough? Is something enough of something or not enough of something? So again, let's look at 3 sentences and see if we can determine what they mean. What do these sentences mean? Number 1, the painting is beautiful enough to be in a museum. Here, the term we're using is beautiful enough. This means that its beauty is adequate. It is beautiful enough to be in a museum. So what are we saying here? That the painting is so beautiful, it should be in a museum. Number 2, my house is not close enough to nature. Here we're using the negative form, not close enough. Close is an adjective that means near, right? My house is not close enough to nature. So what does this mean? This means I think that my house needs to be closer to nature. I am too far away from nature and I don't like it. Number 3 is a question. Are you old enough to drive? When we ask questions using adjective enough or not adjective enough, we're trying to figure out if someone or something meets that bar of adequacy, enough or not enough. So here we're using old enough. So we're talking about age. Are you old enough to drive? In America, for example, you have to be 15 or 16 to start driving. So if I meet someone who is young, I might ask, are you old enough to drive? Now that we have reviewed as adjective as and adjective enough, let's go to page 61. Did you open your book? Please follow along with the listening and fill in the blanks. We'll check the answers after.
Unit 5, Track 4.
Kids' toys aren't cheap these days, but not many toys are as expensive as Astolat Dollhouse Castle. It's an American doll's house, but it isn't an ordinary one. It's as tall as a small Christmas tree and as heavy as a horse. The castle was the idea of an American artist, Elaine Deal, and it took her 13 years to build. Of course, it isn't really a toy. It's a work of art, and it's perfect enough to be in a museum. The furniture is small enough to fit in your hand, and it's as beautiful as the furniture in a real palace. The tiny sofas and beds are as soft as the real things. The books on the shelves aren't large enough to read, but they have real pages. One thing that isn't small is the price. Over $8 million. Are you rich enough to buy it?
Okay, let's listen one more time.
Unit 5, Track 4.
Kids' toys aren't cheap these days, but not many toys are as expensive as Astolat Dollhouse Castle. It's an American doll's house, but it isn't an ordinary one. It's as tall as a small Christmas tree and as heavy as a horse. The castle was the idea of an American artist, Elaine Deal, and it took her 13 years to build. Of course, it isn't really a toy. It's a work of art, and it's perfect enough to be in a museum. The furniture is small enough to fit in your hand, and it's as beautiful as the furniture in a real palace. The tiny sofas and beds are as soft as the real things. The books on the shelves aren't large enough to read, but they have real pages. One thing that isn't small is the price. over $8 million. Are you rich enough to buy it?
Okay, now that we have listened twice, let's check our answers. Number 2, it's blank a small Christmas tree and blank a horse. Here the phrases were as tall as and as heavy as. One thing you will notice about using as adjective as is sometimes we can use it to exaggerate. For example, it says it's as heavy as a horse. It's not really as heavy as a horse, but this is just a way we can say it's very heavy. It's as heavy as a horse. Let's go to number 4. It's a work of art and it's perfect enough to be in a museum. This means it's good enough, it's perfect enough. It's so perfect, it could be in a museum. Let's go to the next paragraph. The furniture is small enough to fit in your hand, and it's as beautiful as the furniture in a real palace. The tiny sofas and beds are as soft as the real things. The books on the shelves aren't large enough to read, and are you rich enough to buy it? So let's look a little closer. It says the furniture is small enough to fit in your hand. This means it's so small you could put it in your hand. It's as beautiful as the furniture in a real palace. So the furniture in this tiny dollhouse and the furniture in a palace are equally beautiful. As soft as also shows that the tiny sofas and beds are as soft as or equal to how soft a real sofa or bed would be. The books on the shelves aren't large enough to read. So here we see a contraction of not adjective enough. Are not turns to aren't. The books aren't large enough to read. And finally, are you rich enough to buy it? Well, it's over $8 million, so probably not. Now let's review have to and don't have to. Remember, we use have to and don't have to talk about obligation. So what do these sentences mean? You have to help with chores. This means that you must, you have no choice, you have to help with chores. Next we see a question. Does she have to work on the weekends? Does she have to? Is it required? Is it obligated? Does she have to work on weekends? Next we see he has to go to bed early tonight. Remember that we change have to has when using the subjects he, she, or it. So here he has to go to bed early tonight. He must, he is obligated to. Now let's go to the listening on page 63. Fill in the blanks as you listen with the correct form of have to.
Unit 5, Track 10.
Do you have to help with the housework? Do you have to tidy your bedroom or clean the kitchen? 13-year-old Martha Pinter and her 9-year-old brother Ben have to do more than most young their age. They live on a farm in Queensland, Australia, and all the family have to share the work. Martha has to get up early to milk the cows. In spring, she also has to look after the new lambs. That's her favourite job. Ben has to collect the hen's eggs before breakfast. However, Martha and Ben don't have to catch the bus to school every day. There isn't a school near their farm, so they have to have all their lessons at home.
Okay, let's listen one more time.
Unit 5, Track 10.
Do you have to help with the housework? Do you have to tidy your bedroom or clean the kitchen? 13-year-old Martha Pinter and her 9-year-old brother Ben have to do more than most young their age. They live on a farm in Queensland, Australia, and all the family have to share the work. Martha has to get up early to milk the cows. In spring, she also has to look after the new lambs. That's her favourite job. Ben has to collect the hens' eggs before breakfast. However, Martha and Ben don't have to catch the bus to school every day. There isn't a school near their farm, so they have to have all their lessons at home.
Okay, let's go ahead and check our answers. Number 2. Do you have to tidy your bedroom or clean the kitchen? Number 3. Have to do. Here we are talking about 13-year-old Martha and 9-year-old Ben, so we would say have to do. And why? Because when we're talking about two people, we could also use the subject they. They have to do. Number 4. All the family have to share the work. Again, here we see all the family, which we could also use the subject they. So they have to share. Number 5. Martha has to get up. She has to. In spring, she also has to look after. Ben has to collect the hen's eggs. So here we see she and he followed by has, right? When we're using he, she, it, we use has instead of have. Number 8, Martha and Ben don't have to catch the bus, and they have to have all their lessons at home. So because we say have your lessons, here it may look a little strange, but we can say have to have. Now we're going to move along into the speaking section. The speaking task for this chapter is discussing a photo. So let's use the grammar and vocabulary from Unit 5 to discuss a photo. First, let's do the listening on page 64. Here we'll see a conversation between two people, Oscar and Nina. They're talking about a photo of a bedroom in someone's house. Listen and fill in the blanks.
Unit 5, Track 11.
Hey Nina, look at this photo. It's Liam's bedroom in his new house.
Oh, it looks big enough for 2 people. Does he have to share it?
No, it's all his. Actually, big as it looks, there's a large mirror in the background, so it looks bigger.
Oh yes, I see. What's that thing on the wall?
It's a clock. What do you think of the colour of the walls?
I'm not convinced.
Really? I think it looks awesome. Looks awesome. I don't think much of those curtains, though.
Me neither. And what's that at the bottom? Is it a carpet?
Yes, I think so. I quite like it. And I love those pictures on the left.
Me too. They look great.
Okay, let's go ahead and fill in the blanks. So number 2, what's that thing on the wall? What's that at the bottom? And I love those pictures on the left. So here we see some terms we can use to talk about a bedroom. Notice that we also see adjective enough and as adjective as, or here not as adjective as, in this conversation. So what kinds of things did they talk about when they were describing this room? They talked about what there was in the room, right? A mirror, the color of the walls, a clock, curtains, a carpet, pictures, and so on. They also use some different phrases. Let's look at some useful language in this conversation. When we are describing a picture, and a picture of a room in this case, we can use terms like at the bottom or top, in the background, and on the left or the right. These are all terms we can use to describe position. At the bottom, at the top, in the background, right, in the back of a picture, on the left, and on the right. Let's see how these are used in this conversation. Here we see, what's that at the bottom? So he's asking, what's that at the bottom of the picture? Is it a carpet? And they said yes, so there's a carpet at the bottom. Next we see there's a large mirror in the background, so this means in the back of the picture. Finally, we see on the left. I love those pictures on the left. We can also use the term on the right. Now that we have looked at useful language for talking about where things are, let's watch a short video to learn about some more useful language from this conversation.
Hello everyone, I'm Chatty Charlie. Let's practice some informal phrases in English. Hey, I'm gonna get my hair cut short and green like this. Green is a great color for me. Are you sure? I'm not convinced. You can use I'm not convinced to politely say you disagree. Oh, I love this coffee shop. Me too. Let's go in. Oh, wait. I don't have any money. Oh. Me neither. Oh well. You can use me too to agree with a positive statement. You can use me neither to agree with a negative statement. Wow! Look at that treehouse. Can you imagine living in that? Yeah, it looks awesome. You can use it looks awesome when you want to say something looks really great. Let's practice. I'll say something and you respond using one of the everyday English phrases. I love listening to music. Me too. This orange carpet would look great in your room. It's nice and bright, and orange goes so well with green, don't you think? I'm not convinced. Ugh, I don't like washing the dishes. Me neither. Look, this is the beach I went to last summer. It looks awesome. After this video, think of 4 more situations and test your partner. Remember, practice makes perfect.
Okay, those are all some great terms we can use in all kinds of conversations. So now let's match. Which term means I feel the same way after a positive statement? That would be me too. For example, if you said, I like chocolate ice cream, I might say, me too. What if you feel the same way, but it's after a negative statement? Here you'd say, me neither. I don't like winter. Oh, me neither. What if we are trying to say, I don't think I like it? There we might say, I'm not convinced. Finally, it looks great. We can also say, it looks awesome. Let's try to use what we learned in that conversation to describe this picture of this room. So remember, we can use terms like on the top, on the bottom, on the left, on the right, in the background, and so on. We can also use as adjective as and as adjective enough. So let's do this one together. Let's look at 5 sentences I can use to describe this room. I can say, it looks big enough for 2 people. It looks like 2 people could sleep in this room comfortably. Right, that's a very big bed and it has 2 sets of pillows, so it looks big enough for 2 people. There's an armchair in the background. So the background is the back of the photo, something, way back there. So here we could say there's an armchair in the background. There's a bookcase on the right. There's a rug on the floor. And I love the windows on the top, right? On the top of the picture, also the top of the room. I love the windows. Now I want you to try. So here we see a picture of a very nice kitchen. Take a moment and try to describe this room using 5 sentences. What did you come up with? Let me show you some examples of what I came up with for describing this room. It's as big as my 1-room apartment. This means this kitchen is so big, it's the same size as my apartment. There are a lot of cupboards in the background. So remember that vocabulary word, cupboards, and we see those back here in the background. There's a door leading outside on the left. On the left, we see a door that leads outside. I don't think much of those stools. So we saw the term, I'm not convinced. Another thing we saw in that conversation was, I don't think much of. If you don't think much of something, this means your opinion of it is low. You don't like it. I don't think much of those stools. We could also say, I'm not convinced about those stools. And finally, it looks awesome. Okay guys, now that we have done some listening and seen an example of a conversation, let's talk about your homework. So you are going to post a photo or a drawing of a room that you would like to have in your dream house. Then you're going to write a conversation between 2 people about that room. Use the grammar and language points in Unit 5. You can use the conversation on page 64 as an example. So you're going to post a picture, or you can draw a picture and post that, of a room you would love to have in your dream house. Then write a conversation, maybe between yourself and someone else, talking about that room or talking about the picture of that room. Use the conversation on page 64 as an example. Okay guys, that's it for our makeup class today. I can't wait to see you guys again next week. See you.